the staffing of Radiator and Tinning was really lots and lots of African people, all races, coloureds, Indians, everybody was employed, and there was no differential ever really between all of us. Um, the chap who was like my manager was Penn Owen. Now he was a strict disciplinarian. In fact, I didn't agree with some of the decisions he made, but one was not in a way able to do anything about it. You just have to accept his decision in those cases. Then we had some wonderful people, really, all the way along the line. When you realise we were running for about 50 years, and we got some wonderful people with wonderful ability. Now we got some of the old people that were the Africans were Abednego was one. Now he had no middle tooth for years and years and years, and he got very big teeth, but a dirty great gap in between. Eventually, we got him to get a tooth made, and he looked very much better after that. But he was with us right till, I'm sure, the end of the film. Then there was a Droppers. He was a bit surly type of individual, but again, good at it, what work he was doing. He was good at that, but a little bit on the, I don't know how to describe it, but was one of the best team, a good one. There was Matthew, or Matteo, who was on the front counter. He was a very quiet individual, was with us for many, many years. And Jeffius Moyo was another one. Jeffius was the man, he was our personnel officer. And he studied the labour laws and made sure that we conformed to the labour laws and all that. But Jeffius was also a partner with the political leader of the MDC. Forgotten his name for a minute. And Jeffius went to London after the liberation, as you might say. He went to London, to Dagenham, to be trained in trade union work properly, sort of by the trade union itself. And he went with this chap who was the leader of the MDC party. And they were great buddies. Then there was another chap on the counter. There was Prayer. He was another chap that I remember very well. All these people were pleasant people. In the European side was Alistair Smith. He was a toolmaker, worked with John Swanepoel. In fact, he was John Swanepoel's apprentice. John Swanepoel was a ex-submarine man in the British Navy during the war, and but he was a man that really first-class engineer, heavy stuff. Where we recruited him from, he was a mining engineer, not at Shabani, but on one of the asbestos mines along the road. But poor old John, he had during the war period, he stood on a landmine and it blew the heel off his foot. And he was in terrible agony for years until he went to England, to the place where all the airmen were repaired during the war, and had a new heel made, and he was fine after that. But John has passed on years again. Alistair Smith has done very well. He's in New Zealand, working again in the similar type of business to our own. There are so many people that I could talk about, and one tends to, at my age, to be inclined to forget those individuals and how important they were to the company. Now, they didn't earn as much. They earned the same as everybody else in the country. There was no way that one could put the increased salaries because you couldn't charge any more for the jobs you were doing. So it was all relative. And it was relative, always an important thing to remember about what we're talking about here and radiator and tinning was the time factor. In 1953, one worked in a workshop where it got dirt floors or, no concrete or anything like that. The roads that you went on, they were strips. That was 2 strips of concrete and a gap in between. So a car, if another car came along, you gave away on one strip to the other car. So everything that we talk about here is all relative to the time that we were in. And it's very difficult for people in Europe to understand these different things because time is the element that is so important. And it's only people that have lived through it that know about it. One of the things that I should mention, that after 1980, we'd got a pension scheme for all our staff, which every new member had, every new person joining the firm had to belong to. But the Africans always felt that I was stealing money from them because they put in a few pence and I put in, shall we say, maybe at least 50% or 100% more than they did. I put in as well to bring up their pensions. And those who retired, they did well out of the pension scheme. But when the devaluation of money in Zimbabwe, as it did do, I mean, if you got $1 million note, which was your pension dropped at the same ratio, and so the money that I took off them for their pensions really was almost stealing. The insurance companies, they were putting it into property, and the individual's pension just dropped. Like my personal pension, and I must have put in thousands and thousands into it, maybe a couple of 100,000, and I don't get a pension at all out of the whole thing. So it just tells you how things change with when a country starts printing its own money. But that's all about the actual individuals. But when because we got now the extrusion presses, we always had a tool room, which kept growing, and it was adjacent to. It was in the Homebuild factory, and in that, the Homebuild was one of the companies, and that we acquired after us. What happened? We ended up with 3 properties. There was Homebuild, which was adjacent to Bristol Road, and we also bought a clothing factory off Mrs. Pincus, which was on the other side. And we also bought Crafting Wood, which was another factory. We bought Ward's Transport, the yard that was over there. And we also bought there was a casting firm. We got a whole block of factories which came to about 8.5 acres. It was huge. And we'd also got the road in between. But the city council, they wanted to widen the road. And they came to me and they said, look, we want to take 20 feet off the front of your factory. And I thought about it, and I said, well, if you do that, what about if you give me the road that's in between my factories and the other factories I've got across the road? And one was a clothing factory, and there was a taxidermist in the one corner, and all those. So we did a swap of the front of the property, but they made me do something which I've forever regretted. They made me put the properties in the name of Radiator and Tinning, which was an operating company. Now, when they did that, they actually, 20 years later, then it affected me seriously, because the main part of Radiator and Tinning was down the centre and split the whole blinking lot up. Now, once we got the road, we were able to put cranes down the road for lifting boxes and crates. Don't forget, when we were selling bronze, we were selling it by the container load or by a ton at a time. So we had to have proper stillages to cart the stuff and move it from place to place. Edgar Allen in Bulawayo was one of our main agents for selling bronze, and we had a good relationship with Edgar Allen's, and so much so their MD from England came to see us because we used a lot of tool steel. One of the departments that was really good was the tool room. Now, in the tool room, we got a lot of Colchester layers, milling machines, Ajax, and that type of milling machine. We got also a very big drilling machine, and also got a slab miller. Now, how I got some of these machines, I got from Jersey, a firm called Rediffusion. And what happened, I happened to go to be taken up to Rediffusion by a chap to show me some computers they'd got. Well, when I got there, the Rediffusion was run by Major Minty. Now, Major Minty was my lecturer when I was 16 or 17, 18 at night school. And I got great admiration for Major Minty, very much so that when I looked at any of the machines that he'd got in his factory, I knew that they were first class, because whatever he did was really top notch. And so I bought I think about 6 container loads of machinery, all their plastics, extrusion presses. It didn't come to an awful lot of money, but if I'd have known, Rediffusion belonged to the same company, the same holding company as Swift Transport in Zimbabwe. And so it would have been a good idea if I'd contacted them and taken a lot more of the machinery. But looking back, I would have lost out in any case, whichever way I moved. But in our tool room, because of the extrusion plant, we had to use spark erosion for the dies. Now, I got 2 Agi spark eroders. Now, Agi is a beautiful machine, Swiss-made, very valuable machinery, and the the plant was you use a copper electrode, and you very accurately it would machine hollows and make all in hardened steel. So because when you make a die, if you make a die normally, you have to do it in a soft state, whereas with spark erosion you can harden it first and then cut into it. And that means you don't get any distortion or cracking with the distortion of the metal, whereas you do by ordinary tool making in soft materials. Then also we got a die polishing machine. Now I've gone and forgotten the name of it now. Extruder hone. Now that extruder hone, it will use diamond paste. And what it's normally used for, that particular machine, is for polishing the bores of impeller blades on jet engines for aircraft. So what it would do, it was two presses, one above the other, and it used a Play-Doh material, and I only found that out recently. Play-Doh with diamond dust mixed up with the Play-Doh, and it's in a canister in the top ram, and you put the job in the middle, and you with the press, you press the material through the die and then to the bottom canister, and then press it back up through, and you do that a couple of times, and you've got a mirror finish on a die, on an extrusion die. Now that machine was really a beautiful machine as well. That was all part of the tool room. But we got lots of we got 3 plastics injection molders, and today the plates I eat my meals off if I want to put them in the microwave, and that is the ones that I brought from Bulawell. I've still got them, what we made, and if there must be hundreds of thousands of them all over the country, because we made thousands of those particular plates. We would get our materials from Triggers. We'd also got, in that firm, we got a continuous casting plant, which I bought from a firm in Birmingham. And it could cast 24 inches wide material, or 2 pieces 16 inches wide, two at the same time. And it had got a scalping, that means cutting I got the melting furnaces, the all electrics, scalping of that means cutting top and bottom of the material, so that it could go straight in for rolling. Then it had got an upcoiler for coiling into coils. So you ended up with coils of material which you could take through to the rolling mill. Now we never really used that machine, and it must have cost me something like 30 or 40,000 pounds. And the whole of that radiator and tinning, the metals part, I always feel I should have got involved, and it should have been sold to Colonel Dubie of Zimbabwe Defence Industries, because I'd already supplied Zimbabwe Defence Industries with brass strip. Now, the Chinese managed to get that business off me, and for fairly obvious reasons, I'm sure. They supplied more, but the Zimbabwe Defence Industries, if they had the whole of our metal section, they would have really just be a part of their own production capacity. Regrettably, I think Zimbabwe Defence Industries has collapsed, and it's being revitalised now again. What else have we got? But we had a sheet metal department. In the sheet metal department, That was I got two other dual form presses there, and these were big ones. The other one I got was about 100 tonner, the first one, the radiator machine, and then the other two were beauties actually. Now the jewelite material that was in those presses, it was worth about it's bismuth, and bismuth is worth nearly 20 pounds a kilo. And in each press, there was something like 50 to 100 kilos. So whoever bought those machines, and I dare say they got them for nothing, really wouldn't have known the value of the metal inside. But this is all water under the bridge. But those were beautiful machines. And we could do, we were doing jerry cans on those. And we used to do those, and we supplied the army. We supplied everybody with jerry cans, which we made. We've got guillotine. We got an Edwards 8-foot guillotine. We got press brakes. I think I've got 2 press brakes. We got nibblers, swagers. I've got every type of machinery that you want. And power presses, I've got I must have 6 to 8 power presses. I think if the firm had been better advertised than it was, Triggers would have come and just taken all the power presses off us, because I dare say they were sold for nothing. Whenever I think of the auctioneer, when he advertised Radiator and Tinning, he got a bigger space for his own name than what he was selling. And he was based in Aurora, so that was a bit of a blue. The auctioneer sold up the place. I suppose one of the things that I do realise, that if with the complete breakdown of industry in Zimbabwe, I would have had the responsibility of all the pensions for all 500 people. And we weren't in a position to, say, reduce the staff. So I'd have had that responsibility, and it would have broken the firm in any case, to try to compensate pensions and all that sort of thing. But I do feel that I've let my people down to a large degree. It's one of those things that you have in life. But I couldn't have gone back. My wife, Margaret, and I haven't spoken much about her, she put up with me a lot. And she wasn't well at that particular time. And she got breast cancer and eventually died. So it was a very, very bad time, and family really are more important than anything else in your life. And one of the things that I regret, that I spent a lot of time working, whereas I should have spent more time with my boys and with what I mean, when you think of it, Mrs. Harlan, Paul goes to Mrs. Harlan for maths lessons, but I was paying for a chap to go to university. But this chap used to go to university. I'd given him a bursary because he was quite bright. And Mrs. Harlan said to Paul, "Why doesn't your dad send you to university?" And when Paul brought it up, do you know, I'd never been to university. I never even thought about university. It wasn't in my mental thinking. And very naughty of me, but Paul then went to university. He stayed at a good lady's house with a red brick wall all around it. forget her name, and then Jerry, he went to university. I think it was good learning for both of them. They got a lot of knowledge. The only fact is for Paul nowadays that because it's a Zimbabwe degree, it's no good in England. They don't accept it. Yet they accept the Zimbabwe nurses, not the accountants so much. And yet there are a lot in Jersey. There are a lot of African working males, females working in the finance industry. They're brought over by their own companies, shall we say, Coopers and Deloitte's. They're brought over and they work in Jersey. They work very long hours by all accounts. Yeah.